Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be covering Phase 3 Best in Slot gear for Retribution Paladin DPS. I went ahead and updated all of the WOWHEAD articles for Phase 3, including the leveling tips guide, the Paladin DPS class overview, the Paladin talents and runes guide, as well as the Phase 3 Best in Slot gear guide that we will be covering in today's video. Now, this video is primarily for Retribution Paladin melee DPS, but may also be useful if you're tanking and are seeking to maximize your damage output or your threat generation. I would also like to take a moment to thank all of my subscribers over on Patreon, and also a big shout out to everybody who subscribes to my YouTube or my Twitch. All of those are linked in the description. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so right before we start, something I want to cover real quick. As you guys know, Season of Discovery is always changing. It moves at a fast pace. There's buffs, there is nerfs, abilities change. So because of that, I will do my best to keep the WOWHEAD article as up to date with all of the cutting edge information as possible. And in case this video ever goes out of date in any way due to any changes or anything like that, you can use the WOWHEAD article as the definitive source for that information. Once again, if you want to follow along or if you just want to check out the article yourself, there is a link provided in the description. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the very first section of the article, the stat breakdown. We're just going to briefly cover all the most important stats and how they affect your damage. So the most important stat is going to be weapon speed, and this is because Seal of Martyrdom heavily favors faster weapons because it is normalized. So I'm not going to go into all the math behind that, but because it's normalized, you want the fastest weapon possible, and for us that's going to be Sulthra's the Lasher from Zul'Farrak. So this is a 2.0 weapon, and when we talk about weapon speed, we're specifically referring to the weapon speed on the weapon tooltip before you calculate haste or anything else like that. This is a 2.0 sword, so it's the fastest possible speed you can get on a two-handed weapon, and so it's going to be very good, way better than all of the slower weapons. A faster weapon like this can be much better than a slower weapon that has even higher damage. So pay attention to the weapon speed more than anything else. The next most important stat is going to be hit chance, and this is because a large portion of our damage relies on our auto attacks landing, because if you miss an attack, you will lose damage from Seal of Martyrdom and from Art of War, and as a result, Exorcism. So new Season of Discovery loot has both melee hit chance and spell hit chance at the same time on the same stat. This makes it even more valuable because a lot of our damage is coming from Exorcism, which is obviously a spell and relies on spell hit chance in order to land. So the enemy bosses in Sunken Temple are 52, not 53. And this means that the hit cap is going to be a little bit lower. So for melee attacks, it's going to be 6% hit chance. And for spells, it's going to be 5% hit chance. So the melee hit cap will also be reduced even further if you have a little bit of weapon skill. So if you have 3 weapon skill, it'll come down to 5.7%, and if you have 5 weapon skill, it'll come down to 5.5%. And because of this and the spell hit cap being only 5%, we're going to get 5% hit on our best in slot set instead of going all the way to 6%, because that extra percent will be partially wasted. Alright, now we have strength and attack power, which is our primary stat, I guess you could say. It benefits all of our abilities. So 1 point of strength is worth around 1.6 agility, and it is going to provide, when you're fully buffed, around 2.21 attack power. Now, it's most often the case that you want to get all of your attack power in the form of strength. You end up getting more this way most of the time, and then a portion of that attack power is going to be converted into spell power via the Sheath of Light rune, and this will cause attack power to help scale the damage of our spells, and this is how strength and attack power will benefit all of our abilities. Alright, so the next stat is agility and critical strike chance. Very powerful stat, pretty much the main secondary stat, but not quite as good as strength. 16 agility is equivalent to around 10 strength, and should give around 1% critical strike chance. So the more critical hits you deal, the more Art of War procs you will get, the more frequently you can cast Exorcism, and the more often you will have the Vengeance buff. So it kind of hits a wall the more critical strike chance you get, because you sort of run out of global cooldowns in order to cast more exorcism casts, and vengeance uptime is already really high, so it hits a certain wall at a certain point where the value of it goes down. Now with the new phase 3 rune called Wrath equipped on the Helm slot, all of your melee critical strike chance is also converted into spell critical strike chance for exorcism and consecrate, which can now also critically hit, and that's going to help it retain some of the value even as you get higher and higher levels of critical strike chance. Alright, so only very slightly worse than agility and critical strike chance is going to be attack speed, also known as haste. So there's a couple different attack speed increases available in phase 3, the most notable ones being the blacksmithing helmet, the blacksmithing shoulders, the automatic crowd pummeler, the glove enchant, and the iron counterweight. So these are all key pieces of a best in slot set. 1% attack speed is going to be only slightly worse than 1% critical strike chance. The more frequently you attack, the more Seal of Martyrdom damage you deal, the higher your vengeance uptime is going to be, the more Art of War procs you get, and the more exorcism damage you can deal as a result. So just like critical strike chance, it has a lot of second order effects increasing the value. Now, something to keep in mind when it comes to attack speed increases is that they all scale together multiplicatively. So if you look at iron counterweight, for example, it says it gives you 3% attack speed increase. But it actually ends up being more than that, because when you combine it with all of the other increases that you're getting from your blacksmithing helmet or your crowd pummeler, it actually scales up to much higher than 3%. So when you have all of your attack speed cooldowns being used at the same time, the 3% actually is more like 8%. Okay, so the next stat that we have is weapon skill. Now, it's a good stat, but it's not quite as good as it could be, because the enemies in Sunken Temple are only level 52 instead of 53. If they were 53, it would be a lot more impactful. Now, the cap is going to be 3 weapon skill. After that point, it's not going to help too much. So it's not something you really need to focus on too much. Humans are going to get all the weapon skill they need from their racial passive if they use a sword or a mace, which they should. And then dwarves will get all the weapon skill they need from the power assisted lifting belt, which will be their best in slot. Now, what weapon skill does at this point in the game is it reduces the penalty that your attacks get when they glance. So next we have weapon DPS, which is still a valuable stat. It increases the damage of your Seal of Martyrdom, Crusader Strike, Judgment, and your auto attacks. But it's not as important as weapon speed. So if you have 2 weapons of a similar speed, then you're going to take the one with higher DPS. But if you have 2 weapons of different speeds, like one that's fast and one that's really slow, you're most likely going to want to use the faster one unless it's a much lower level item. So finally we have spell power. Now, it's not like a primary or secondary stat that we're aiming for. We're going to get most of our spell power from attack power from the Sheath of Light rune. It does increase the damage of Hammer of Wrath, Consecration, and Exorcism, but it's not something we're ever going to gear. We're going to get all of our spell power, for the most part, from attack power. It's pretty much the weakest stat we have, so don't pay too much attention to it. Alright, so for the set, as you guys can see, we still want blacksmithing for both the Helm from last phase and the new shoulders. They're both really good. The other profession that you're going to want can either be enchanting, alchemy, or engineering. Engineering is really good if you're speedrunning. Enchanting or alchemy is really good if you're trying to parse. Wailing Berserker set is really important. This 3-piece bonus is an extra attack, sort of like the Trinket Hand of Justice. Really, really good. You're also going to want the bracers from Warsong Gulch Reputation. You're going to want Sulthraze the Lasher from Zul'Farrak. It's really fast. It's really powerful. You're also going to want to combine this with Automatic Crowd Pummeler. So you use Automatic Crowd Pummeler first, and then when the haste is gone, you switch back to the Lasher. The Libram is a attack power when fighting Dragonkin Libram. You get this from the Blood Moon PvP event in Stranglethorn Vale. You're also going to want the ring from the Wild Offerings. This is a ring from the Scapula of the Fallen Avatar in Sunken Temple. And you're also going to want both Darkmoon decks. Now, I know these are really expensive, and not everybody's going to be able to afford them. So in the trinket section, we will talk about some alternatives. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive deep into every single slot and cover all the options. Okay, so for the Helm slot, you're going to want the Blacksmithing Helmet from Phase 2. Anytime the cooldown's ready, it's going to be best in slot. When the cooldown is not ready, or if you're not a blacksmith, then there are 3 different helmets you can use. Great Helm of the Nightmare from Sunken Temple is the best option if you're hit capped and you already have that 5% hit chance. If you do not have 5% hit chance yet, the best option is actually the PvP set helm. So this requires the rank of Knight Lieutenant in PvP. And there's also the Emerald Dream Helm, which is just like all of the other items in the Emerald Dream set, which is from Emerald Warden's Reputation. It's a carbon copy of the PvP set with just slightly worse stats. So if you don't have access to the PvP helm, you can pick this up instead with Honored Reputation with the Emerald Wardens. So those are the 3 helms that are better than the Blacksmithing Helmet when it's on cooldown. Now there's also a couple helmets listed below this, but the Emerald Dream Helm is so easy to get that I think most people will just pick up the Emerald Dream Helmet until they get one of the other helmets. And for the enchant, you're going to want the Lesser Arcanum of Veracity. This is from the Libram of Veracity, and it gives you 8 strength to a leg or head slot item. Okay, for shoulders, you want Blacksmithing once again for the Shoulder Plates of Dread. These have a really nice attack speed and attack power proc on them that works in Sunken Temple. And if you need help figuring out how to get the recipe to craft these, there is a link provided here to our WOWHEAD guide on the Phase 3 crafted epic items. So check that out if you need help figuring out how to craft these. The next best shoulders will be the Shoulders of Fanaticism. So they have strength, agility, and hit, no stamina, so they're very well itemized for PvE. The best pre-raid option is the PvP set shoulders, and once again, these require Knight Lieutenant. If you don't have access to the PvP set shoulders, you can get either the Dreg Metal shoulders from Blackrock Depths, or the Cloud Drift Mantle, which is from a quest in Fellwood, to hold you over until you can get into the raid and get yourself the Shoulders of Fanaticism or craft yourself the Blacksmithing Shoulders. And then there's also the Emerald Dream Shoulders, which are, once again, just a little bit worse than the PvP set shoulders. So these are all pretty easy options to get until you can get either the Fanaticism Shoulders, or if you're a blacksmith, craft the Shoulder Plates of Dread. And the enchant that you're going to want on the shoulders is the Atalai Signet of Might. That gives you 15 attack power. For the cloak slot, there's not a lot of options. There's really only 2 options that are better than the Drape of Dismantling from Gnomergan in Phase 2. And that is the Blackveil Cape from Blackrock Depths and the Panther Fur Cloak from Sunken Temple, which is just 1 more agility than the Blackveil. So the Blackveil Cape is currently dropping from the Houndmaster Grebmar, not the High Interrogator. I know a lot of people farmed the wrong boss by accident because it's not dropping from the High Interrogator like it's supposed to. Also, the enchant that you're going to want here is 3 agility. Okay, so for the chest, we want the Wailing Berserker chest plate because we are building the 3-set bonus. The 2-set bonus is also very good. It's 1% chance to hit. The next best option is the Insulated 2-set. So this was best in slot in Phase 2. The chest and the legs, if you still have them and you have the 2-set bonus, this will be your pre-Sunken Temple best in slot. If you don't have the set bonus, then the best option would be the PvP set chest. And once again, this is going to require the PvP rank of Knight. There's also a bunch of different chest pieces below this that are all very close in value. The Warforged, which is from a Badlands quest. There's a random world drop. There's the Phase 1 crafted chest. And there is the Emerald Dream breastplate. So once again, this is going to be just very slightly worse than the PvP set. And the enchant that you're going to want here is +3 to all stats. For the bracer slot, once again, you're going to want the Berserker bracers from Exalted with the Warsong Gold Reputation Silverwing Sentinels. If you still have the level 40 version, they're still really, really good, and you just wear these all the way to 50 and then replace them with the level 50 version. Now, if you're not Exalted with Warsong Gold Reputation yet, you should be going to Ashenvale every day and completing the quest Repelling the Invaders by killing one of the NPCs during the Battle for Ashenvale, looting the mark, accepting the quest, and then turning it in. This will give you 1,000 rep. If you're a human, it'll give you 1,100 rep every single day. And that way you can get Exalted with Warsong Gold Reputation really fast. So the next best option is going to be the Engineering Bracers. They're not quite as powerful as the Berserker Bracers, but if you happen to be engineering, you can make these. So below the Engineering Bracers, we have 2 different hit options. The Cursed Slime Scale Bracers from Sunken Temple and the Ornate Dark Iron Bangles from Gnomergan. These These are both hit and spell power. The spell power doesn't really do much for us, but the hit is very good. So if you have 5% hit already, these are pretty worthless, but if you don't, these are going to be very good and your next best option. Below these, we have a trash drop from BRD, we have the aim stabilizers from Gnomergan, and we have 3 different world drops. So a lot of options here you can use until you get the Berserker Bracers, which you should be able to get pretty fast now that you're able to get over 1,000 reputation every day very easily. And the enchant that you're going to want here is 9 strength. Okay, for the glove slot, best in slot is going to be the disease-ridden plate fists from Sunken Temple. We have strength and hit, and then very close below them we have the corruption-laden handguards. These have crit instead of hit, and if you're already hit capped and you already have 5% hit, these will be a bit better than the disease-ridden ones. So below this we have pre-raid options, Vice Grips of Strength and Vice Grips of the Tiger. These are from Zul'Farrak, and they have a random enchantment on them. What you really want to get is Strength or Tiger. They also can be attack power, but the attack power ones are only about as good as the Gnomergan gloves from last phase, so you're really looking to get of the Tiger or Strength. In the number 3 slot below these, we have the foul-smelling fighter's gloves from Sunken Temple. These are leather gloves with agility and hit, and obviously they're only going to be good if you're still below the hit cap of 5%. We also have the gloves of the Pathfinder from a Winter Spring quest. These are really easy to get. In the number 4 slot, we have a bunch of different random world drops. And then in the number 5 slot, we have the gloves from last phase. Then finally, in the number 6 slot, we have the PvP set gloves and the Emerald Dream Gauntlets, which are both very close. There's just a 1 strength difference between them. Obviously, the PvP set gloves require Sergeant Major, and these are just not very good unless you have all 6 items in the set and you're getting the set bonus. So I recommend not really using these and going straight for gloves of the Pathfinder or Vice Grips until you get one of the raid gloves. The enchant that you want here is actually going to be Minor Haste. This gives you 1% attack speed, but it actually ends up being more than 1% once it scales with all of our other attack speed increases. As you get more gear, this is going to get better and better and better, so I really recommend using this over strength. Okay, so for the belt slot, our best option is going to be the non-hit options because we're going to get all of our hit from other slots in the best in slot set. So for a human, the best option is going to be a tie between the Girdle of Bestial Fury, which can be gotten pre-raid from Blackrock Depths, and the Tusk Band from Sunken Temple. These are both pretty much dead even. If you're a dwarf, you're going to want the Lifting Belt from Gnomergan, so you can get 3 weapon skill to reach the cap. If you're still below 5% hit chance, then it's going to be a deadweight tie between the Engineering Belt, Hyperconductive Gold Wrap, and the Dark Vision Girdle. And that assumes that the cooldown is ready. So if the cooldown is not ready, the Dark Vision Girdle will actually be a little bit better. Now that's only if you need the hit. Also in the number 2 slot, we have the Waistguard of Pain from Sunken Temple. Down in the number 3 slot, we have a bunch of different random world drops of the Tiger. Number 4, we have Belt of the Gladiator, another random world drop. And then number 5, we have the Highlander's Lamellar Girdle. So this is from Arathi Basin reputation. It requires Honored. And the problem with this belt is it only gives melee critical strike chance. It doesn't give any spell crit. And the reason we choose Lamellar is because it's just simply better than Plate. It usually has either the same stats or better, and it also has bonus intellect. So if you're going to buy the Arathi Basin items, you should be buying the Lamellar set. Alright, for the leg slot, we are obviously aiming for the Wailing Berserker leg plates. We want to complete the 2 and the 3 set bonus as soon as possible. The next best option is the Silver Shell leg plates from Sunken Temple. They are strength and hit, so they're only good if you're still below that 5% hit mark. And these are better on an individual level than the Berserker leg plates, but they are worse if you are getting the Berserker leg plates set bonus. Either the 2 set or the 3 set will make them much better. The best option before you get into Sunken Temple is the Insulated Legards 2 set. So if this was best in slot in phase 2, and if you still have the 2 set bonus, you're going to want to use that 2 set bonus of the Insulated Chest and the Insulated Legs until you get the Wailing Berserker set. If you don't have the Insulated 2 set bonus, then the best option pre-raid is the PvP legs from the PvP set. These require the rank of Knight. And then very slightly worse than these, we have once again the Emerald Dream leg plates from Emerald Warden's reputation. So tied with the Emerald Dream legs are the Lofty Legguards of the Tiger, random world drop, and the Leggings of the Ursa, which is from a quest in Fellwood. These only give melee critical strike chance, not spell crit. And then in the number 6 category, we have Centurion leg plates from a Syrian Gorge quest called Rise Obsidian. So most people can probably just grab either the Emerald Dream leg plates or continue using their insulated 2-set bonus until they get the Wailing Berserker legs. And the recommended enchant here is going to be, once again, the Lesser Arcanum of Veracity, applying 8 strength to the legs. Okay, for the boot slot, we are picking the Wailing Berserker battle boots. Once again, we want to complete the 2-set and the 3-set for the bonuses. And the best pre-raid option is going to be the Godslayer Greaves. These are from Wild Offerings. So if you need a guide to the Wild Offerings, you can click right here. There's a link provided to our WOWHEAD guide on the Wild Offerings. Also in the number 2 slot, we have the Tenacious Troll Kickers. These are kind of like tank boots from Sunken Temple. They have some strength and hit, which is very good if you're still below the 5% hit cap. And then in the number 3 slot, we have a Trash Drop from Blackrock Depths. We have the boots of the Atalai Blood Shaman, their spell power and some hit. So the spell power isn't really a big deal, but the hit is very good if, once again, you're still below the 5% hit mark. And then in the number 4 slot, we have a random world drop of the Tiger and the Sandstalker Ankle Guards from Zul'Farrak. And then number 5, we have the Lamellar Greaves from Arathi Basin Revered Reputation. Once again, we are picking Lamellar over Plate because it has some bonus intellect and the stats are either the same or better. And the enchant you're going to want on the boots is 7 agility. Okay, so for the next slot, pretty obvious, we want the Bloodstained Charm of Valor from Sunken Temple. This is only a 2 attack power upgrade compared to the Officer's Torque from Phase 2 Nomergan. And then also in the number 2 slot, we have the Resilience of the Exiled from Sunken Temple. It's just got some hit on it, and this is going to be good if you are still below 5% hit. Then in the number 3 slot, we have a bunch of different random world drops, Kibi's Pendant, and a bunch of different necks of the Tiger and Strength. Alright, for the ring slot, we have 3 different rings that are all pretty much tied for best in slot. There is 2 equivalent hit rings. Drakeclaw Band of the Berserker, this is from Sunken Temple, and it starts from the Scapula of the Fallen Avatar. It's a quest that gives you this ring when you complete it. This drops off the last boss. Then there's also the Band of the Wilds, which is from the Wild Offerings. If you need a guide to the Wild Offerings, then there is a link right here you can click. Also in the number 1 slot, we have the Protector's Band from Warsong Gulch Reputation. This is the level 48 version of the ring. And essentially, all 3 of these rings are going to be pretty much close to equal. The best in slot set will use both of the hit rings together. That way it can use both of the Darkmoon decks and still be hit capped. And if you need to drop hit at any point, one of the best ways to do that is to replace one of these rings with the Protector's Band. So below this, we have, in the number 2 slot, we have Blackstone Ring, which is the same 20 attack power and 1% chance to hit, but it doesn't have any spell hit. It's only melee hit. That's why it's a little bit worse. And we have a bunch of different rings of strength and of the Tiger. And in the number 3 slot, we have the level 38 version of the Protector's Band. So if you have Revered with the Silverwing Sentinels, most of you guys are probably going to use both of the Protector's Bands, the level 38 and level 48 version, together at the same time. Then you're going to probably do some Wild Offerings, get the Band of the Wilds, and at some point replace the Protector's Band with the Drakeclaw Band of the Berserker. Okay, so for trinkets, there's kind of a lot to say, so bear with me for a moment. The Darkmoon decks, Sandstorm and Decay, have recently undergone some changes. Sandstorm got nerfed and Decay got buffed. Now, it still seems like both of these are going to be best in slot together. You're going to want to use both if you can afford it. These come from the Dunes deck and the Plagues deck, so you collect all the cards, the Ace through 8, you combine them to make the deck, and then you turn it into the Darkmoon Fair. That's how you get the card. Also, this Dunes deck, I'm pretty sure it's a reference to the new Dune movie, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, it is amazing. One of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life. Go check it out. I think it's on Amazon right now. You can, rent it. So I just thought I would recommend that real quick. So what I want to talk about next is actually the Attack Chicken and the Battle Chicken trinkets. So the Domesticated Attack Chicken is from Nomergan Last Boss, and the Gnomish Battle Chicken you can craft if you are a Gnomish Engineer. Now, what these trinkets do is they spawn a chicken, and that chicken has a chance, a very small chance, to buff your entire party with a battle squawk, which gives them 5% haste for 4 minutes, and it will scale with other sources of haste. So they share a cooldown. You can't use them both together. You can only use one or the other. And the domesticated attack chicken drops a level 40 chicken that dies very easily and misses a lot of its attacks. Seems like it's probably less likely to give you a battle squawk. And then the gnomish chicken scales with your level. It hits much more often and seems like it's more likely to give you that battle squawk. So if you are an engineer, I recommend going gnomish and making the battle chicken. On the off chance that it does battle squawk, it's going to be an absolutely massive buff to your entire raid, and it will be the best trinket that money can offer. So if you do manage to get a battle squawk from your chicken, then engineering is really, really good. If you don't, however, get a battle squawk from your chicken, or if you're able to get one from your domesticated chicken instead somehow, then enchanting and alchemy are really way better at this point, for single target damage at least, by a very solid margin. And the reason for that is the new sigil gives 50 attack power and 50 spell power. That's for enchanting. And then for alchemy, you have the new flask that gives attack power, and the potions that give you also attack power and spell power. So they are simply much more powerful than bombs. Unless you're speedrunning, I would definitely recommend enchanting or alchemy for parsing. The only way that engineering can keep up with enchanting or alchemy is if you do get a battle squawk from your gnomish chicken, or if you are speedrunning and you need the burst AoE damage from Goblin Sapper Charge. Alright, so now that we've gotten all that stuff out of the way with the chickens and the Dark Moon decks and the professions, we can talk about the other damage dealing trinkets. So if you can't get your hands on the Dark Moon decks, the next best trinket is the Breath of the Beast. This is from the Wild Offerings. Once again, if you need a guide for the Wild Offerings, you can click the link right here. It'll take you to the WOWHEAD guide. So this is a simple one hit, one crit trinket that will be really good if you are still below that 5% hit cap. In the number 3 slot, we have the Gyromatic Experiment. This is from Gnomergan, and it has a really nice 5% attack speed use that you can only use once every 30 minutes, so it's a really long cooldown. Anytime it's on cooldown, it's just 18 attack power, which is the same as the Black Fathom Deep's Pearl. So when you have the cooldown ready, this can be really, really good, especially on the shorter fights like the first boss in Sunken Temple. Typically shorter than 1 minute, and this can start performing really, really well, especially when it's paired with Crowd Pummeler. And then if you can manage to get the fight below 30 seconds, this can actually perform better than some of the Dark Moon decks. So in the number 4 slot, we have the Sanctified Orb. This is from the Paladin class quest called Forging the Mightstone. And this gives you 3% critical strike chance. We also have the Roar of the Guardian. This is from the Emerald Warden's Exalted, and it gives you some attack power. So just like any other active trinket, just like Gyromatic Experiment, these get better and better the shorter the fight. They're just not quite as good as the Gyromatic Experiment. And then in the number 5 slot, we have the Avenger's Void Pearl from Black Fathom Deeps, just 18 attack power. And in the number 6 slot, we have the Blood Ritual Medallion from Sunken Temple. This thing is remarkably awful. It's so bad it's worse than the Black Fathom Deep's 18 attack power trinket, so I just do not recommend using this at all. Okay, for the weapon section, we're going to be placing a heavy emphasis on faster weapons to increase our Seal of Martyrdom damage and Art of War procs. So in Phase 3, there is no situation where using a two-handed slow weapon with Divine Storm is ever viable, even for cleave damage. Instead, to do cleave damage, we're going to be using a one-handed weapon with Hammer of the Righteous, believe it or not. So we're going to be covering both one-handed and two-handed weapons, one-handers for cleave and AoE, and two-handers for single target. Okay, so the best one-handed weapons for cleave and AoE damage using Hammer of the Righteous, it's a tie between Flurry Axe and Inventor's Focal Sword. So Flurry Axe is a 1.5 speed axe. It's a random world drop. It's very expensive, and it has a small chance to give you an extra attack on your next swing. And the Focal Sword is a 1.4 speed sword that has some crit and spell power, and it's from Maradon. So these are both very close to one another. They're pretty much equal. If you're a dwarf, then the axe is a couple DPS better. If you're a human, the sword is a couple DPS better. It's so close, it doesn't even matter. At this point, I would not recommend spending any money on the Flurry Axe. just get a focal sword instead. It's pretty much just as good. Now, until you get one of these weapons for Hammer of the Righteous, the best weapon will be Eclipsed Sanguine Saber from the Stranglethorn Vale Blood Moon PvP event. It costs you 25 silver coins. It's a 1.5 speed sword, so it's really fast. The only downside to this weapon is you cannot use it at the same time as the Libram, the Dragonkin Libram. So if you're using a weapon swap macro like you should when you swap to your one-hander and shield, you also want to swap your Libram if you're going to use the sword, because you cannot equip them at the same time. So if you take a look at the Hammer of the Righteous ability tooltip, you'll see that it doesn't scale from your weapon's damage, it scales from the weapon's DPS. So there are slower, higher DPS weapons like Dragon's Cry that will deal more damage with Hammer of the Righteous, but they're not viable because they sacrifice way too much Seal of Martyrdom damage and way too many Art of War procs, and that's because they're slower. So you really want to go for the fastest weapons possible, even when you're using a one-handed weapon with Hammer of the Righteous. So you can even start with a two-handed weapon like Crowd Pummeler and swap to a one-handed weapon to use Hammer of the Righteous mid-fight in order to cleave. So for example, Shade of Veranicus. You can start with Crowd Pummeler and use the cooldown, and then when the ads start coming, you switch to your one-hander and you start using Hammer of the Righteous to cleave them, and then when the ads die, you switch back to your two-hander so you can keep doing single target damage. So in this way, you can kind of conveniently swap between cleave damage and single target damage depending on what you need. The best shield for using with your one-handed weapon is going to be Shizzle's Drizzle Blocker. It's simply got 13 strength, which makes it the best damage dealing shield. And the enchant that you're going to want here is going to be 15 strength. Okay, moving on to two-handed weapons for single target damage. The most powerful weapon is still Crowd Pummeler. It's 2.0 speed and it has that massive 50% haste buff. And if you look at Sulthraze the Lasher, the new fast weapon from Phase 3, it's got the same 2.0 speed and much higher weapon DPS, but it does not have the haste buff. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine them both. For the first 30 seconds of the fight, we're going to use Crowd Pummeler, and we're going to use all of our other cooldowns together with it. Then after 30 seconds, when the haste buff has ended, we're going to switch weapons to Sulthraze the Lasher and use that for either the rest of the fight or until the 3-minute mark when we're going to use Crowd Pummeler again if the fight goes that long. So equipping automatic Crowd Pummeler puts it on a 30-second cooldown. So when the Crowd Pummeler has 30 seconds left on its cooldown, you're going to want to equip it again so you can use it as soon as possible at the 3-minute mark. Now, this is assuming the fight goes long enough, because obviously you don't want to put Crowd Pummeler back on if you're not going to be able to get to use it. So if you have a Crowd Pummeler, you should be using it full time until you get a Sulthraze the Lasher for weapon swapping. There is no other weapon that is worth swapping to from Crowd Pummeler. And if you don't have a Crowd Pummeler yet, and you do have Sulthraze the Lasher, then you should be using Lasher full time until you get a Crowd Pummeler and can start using it on the pull for the cooldown. Sulthraze the Lasher also, it's available pre-raid from Zul'Farrak. So there are two one-handed swords from Zul'Farrak, Jangthrace the Protector and Sangthrace the Deflector. You're going to combine them both to get Sulthraze the Lasher, the epic two-handed sword. Now, if you don't have the Lasher or Crowd Pummeler yet, the next best weapon will be a tie between Whisper and the Jackhammer. So Whisper is a 2.6 speed mace, and it's a quest reward from the Price of Hope, which is part, I believe, of the Hammer of the Righteous rune quest chain. And the Jackhammer is a 2.5 speed, ultra rare trash drop from Uldaman that has a chance on hit to increase your attack speed by 30%. So you guys might recognize this as being one of the better weapons last phase. At number 3, we have Terran Icebreaker, which is a random world drop mace, 2.3 speed. And then below all of these faster weapons, we have the much worse level 50 slow weapons. So at number 4, we have Chieftain's Bane. It's really slow. It's from Sunken Temple. And then at number 5, we have Parasomnia, which is from the Blood Moon PvP event in Stranglethorn Vale. More of a PvP sword for Divine Storm. Doesn't really have much of a place in PvE. So the obvious avenue for most people to upgrade their weapons is to get Whisper from the Hammer of the Righteous rune quest chain, and then move up to Sulthraze the Lasher, and continue doing Nomergan every week. Try to get an automatic crowd pummeler if you don't have one already. And just like last phase, we are going to be using iron counterweight on our weapon, giving us 3% attack speed, and that's going to scale with all of our other attack speed increases, giving us on average a lot more than 3% attack speed. Now, it was technically possible to get Crusader for a period of time, which would have been better, but it's no longer possible to get the Righteous Orbs, and Warcraft logs is now banning any log that has Crusader on it. Okay, so all we have left now is Libram. There's only 3 of them in the game for Paladin DPS. These are the only options. So anytime there's Dragonkin mobs, you want the Draconic Destruction Libram. It gives you 36 attack power. This is from the Blood Moon PvP event in Stranglethorn Vale. And once again, you cannot equip it at the same time as the Sanguine Saber or Parasomnia. Anytime there's undead mobs, you want the Discarded Tenants Libram from Blackfathom Deeps. And anytime there is neither, you want Libram of Benediction, which will reduce the mana cost of your seals. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching the video. I know it was a little bit on the longer side, so thank you for sticking with me. And I really appreciate all of my patrons, people who subscribe to the channel, my Twitch, my YouTube, my Patreon. Love you guys so much. If you guys are interested in Cataclysm content, I am writing new articles for Cataclysm pre-patch. They should be out by April 26th. And then once they are complete, I will make videos about them as well. I know a lot of people are asking me about Cataclysm content, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I hope you guys are all enjoying Phase 3 so far, and I will see you in the next video.
This show was brought to you by Light Club, where monkeys go to church.